too bad like it has been. So we'll get this cracking. But I wanted to make a video for y'all because today Broncos coach Sean Payton, he had talked to Kay Adams. It was a great interview. He always does really good Ken interviews with her, especially around the Super Bowl time. And they just really talked a lot. And he left a lot of things on the tea leaves, man. There was a lot to read there, specifically talking about how he doesn't really feel like that there's, he talked about the team having, must-haves, needs, and wants, right? That's kind of how he labels when he's looking at, free agents in the draft and all that kind of stuff. And, it was Kay Adams that had brought up to him that she feels like the Broncos need some sort of a veteran receiver. He kind of didn't touch too much on it. He said he likes the young receiver group, but he talked about a joker role. He talked about, a tight end that or a running back that can, do it all, that you can mix around. And he referenced guys like, like Reggie Bush, like Darren Sproles, like Jeremy Shockey, like Jimmy Graham, those kinds of guys, right? Which I think uh, really is interesting when you're looking at the draft right now. I always thought to myself, Sean Payton wants a very well-rounded tight end, somebody that could do some blocking and somebody that can also kind of explode and be a really good receiving threat. But because that's kind of been his history while he was in Denver. You look at his history when he was in New Orleans, it kind of paints a different picture. So, Colston Loveland, you are someone that is going to be a primary focus of mine. Elijah Arroyo, Harold Fannin, those are guys that can really, really make a a splash and would make a ton of sense for the Broncos team. But then you also got, Mason Taylor, who I think is extremely well rounded. He's just very solid. And obviously Tyler Warren, who's the best tight end in this draft class. It's going to be interesting. And it makes these running backs really an interesting debate too. But somebody like a Cooper Kupp fits exactly, in every sense of the word, exactly what I feel like Sean Payton loves in a player, in a leader, um, as a locker room guy, everything. Okay. I'll give you guys a little bit of background that I know here. I'm not sure how many of you guys that are watching this are fantasy football fans, or you listen to Stefania Bell on the Fantasy Focus Football podcast. It's an awesome podcast. The reason I bring it up is because she's the one that talks a lot about the injuries. She's like the injury specialist. She's a PT, and she's very well versed, but she's extremely well connected in the industry. And consistently every single year, she says Cooper Kupp is the hardest working guy in terms of what he does to take care of his body, and he's the most like he's just hyper focused on his health, on his diet, on the way that he prepares his body to get it right. And he has had a history of a couple of freak injuries. I wouldn't say they're injuries that are related to his age, but he has some when he's injured. But what he's shown is that not only does he come back from injuries really strong, he plays through injuries and he's still very productive. And he's going to be entering his year 32 season. And a lot of people think, well, that's is old, it's past his prime. And yes, is he a descending player? Certainly. But for somebody that's hyper focused on getting his body right, that is, you know, making sure he's always in really good shape, similar to somebody like an Adam Thielen, who has a very similar work ethic and they play very similarly. These guys, when they're healthy, they can be unbelievably productive. I mean, Cooper Kupp can play 10 games next season, and he's going to be your second leading receiver on this team, without a doubt. Unbelievable production. And from a locker room standpoint, when you talk about who he is in the locker room, when you talk about how his players like him, the kind of leader and the kind of veteran that he can be, Sean Payton referenced today, he talked about it. He said, we really like Vele and we really like Troy Franklin, right? And I think it's a huge year for Troy Franklin this year. But what's a better way to be able to get these guys to develop more, to understand how to be a pro, to understand how to run routes and get open, right? I think Cortland Sutton can teach these guys a lot in terms of like how to carry themselves and how to go about preparing in the classroom and being a good, leader. But Cooper Kupp can take that to another level in a sense of how to be so crisp and pay so much attention details to your route running, how to create separation, the kind of work ethic that it takes to be able to just be unbelievably reliable when it comes to catching the football. He can bring an entirely new element to this Broncos really young wide receiver room that I love. And the thing I love about him too, and we touched on this, is the versatility. He can kill you in the slot, but he can also win and he can kill you on the outside. And that can allow for these young players to continue to develop wherever they feel like their roles are best suited in the present and in the future. They can play that role, and Cooper Kupp can just kind of fit in wherever it is. It's also not going to cost you very much to be able to get him. Now, one thing that the Rams had said, the Rams talked to they said that they're in negotiations. They're talking with Cooper Kupp and his family to try to get him to the best spot for them. So obviously the Rams, as they should, are not just going to trade him to like the Panthers or the Jaguars. They're going to want to get him over to a city and a team that they feel comfortable with and that they feel like they have an opportunity to win football games. And it's most likely going to be in the AFC. And so when you think about the AFC teams, not including the Chiefs, that could be in this conversation, like the better teams, you got the Bills, you got the Ravens, among maybe a few others, and then you put the Broncos right in there too. Broncos are currently the favorite. You can easily sell that Denver, as currently constructed, is the best fit. I mean, selling Denver Broncos to Cooper Cup is not going to be difficult like it used to be. We have a great young quarterback that actually probably reminds him a lot of Matthew Stafford. That he knows is accurate. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. He's only going to get better. He loves to work the middle of the field. Cooper Cup's going to love that. Secondly, you're going from Sean McVay to Sean Payton. So you love the fact that you're going from an elite offensive mind to another elite offensive mind. That's a big selling point. The other two teams can't say that. Yes, Josh Allen is another tier of quarterback, no doubt about it. But how is he going to be with Joe Brady? What's his role going to be there? Buffalo is not the best city for people to want to live in and raise their children in. From what you hear, same with Baltimore. So Denver's got an advantage there, and he also knows they got a really good defense. This is a team that's going to be competing year in and year out moving forward. It's not a crazy thought to have Cooper Cup say, I'd rather go to Denver. I want to go to Denver. He's probably going to give them a list of teams. Say, I like Denver. I like Baltimore. I like the Bills, for example. And we would be able to offer just as much, if not better, because our draft picks are higher. They're more valuable picks than theirs are. So if it's going to be late round ones, it's good. And we could be able to offer them more money. We can offer them a better restructure. We can offer them extension. There's a lot more that we can do from the flexibility on that standpoint. So there's a lot of reasons Bronco fans should feel optimistic about the opportunity to get Cooper Cup. But like I said, guys, this guy is just an absolute stud. 3 years ago, just 3 years ago, he was a Triple Crown winner, man. He was a guy that, and for whatever reason, I think sometimes people might have forgotten just how ridiculously good this kid is. But I'll go ahead and I'll remind y'all. Cooper Cup in 2021 had 145 catches, 1,947 yards, 16 touchdowns. A historic season in every way. I think not only was he the Triple Crown winner that year, I think he broke records in terms of catches and yards in a season. Um, Absolutely ridiculous production. Now, in the years following, sure, he didn't. Let's go into the Pro Football Reference here. He didn't play in every single game, right? I mean, after the 2021 season where he absolutely shined, he played 17 out of 17 games. He had an injury here where he played 9 games. Had some injuries here where he played 12, and had injuries here where he played in 12, started 11. So he probably ended up getting hurt on one of those. Um, but still, even in those other seasons, when he was playing, he was extremely productive. You're talking 59 catches, 737 yards, 5 touchdowns, 75 catches, 812 yards, 6 touchdowns. Last year playing 11 games, 67 catches, 710 yards, 6 touchdowns. You put that out towards what would have been if had he played the whole time, and his numbers, just looking at it prorating, he's going to be near at 100 yards, about 1,300 yards receiving, well over 1,000 yards at least, and about 10 to 11 touchdowns in the limited action. So, I mean, absolutely a stud. He's a Super Bowl MVP. He understands how to win. He understands how to get a winning culture. And when you compare him to somebody that I think makes a lot of sense from a comparison standpoint of Adam Thielen, right? Because not only are they very similar in terms of the way that they play, not just because they're slot white receivers, but both of them are productive and they're unbelievably good because they have a strong work ethic. They love to play ball and they're technicians. They're very good at route running and creating separation. Even with some of the shortcomings that they have athletically, they're able to win. Well, Adam Thielen is 34 years old going into his year 35 season. So he's a couple of years older than Cooper Cup. And he's had his fair share of injuries throughout his career too. I mean, it happens to the best of us. But when you look at it, when he left Minnesota and he went over to Carolina, right? He was 33 years old in his first season in Carolina. So he was a year older than what Cooper Cup will be this season. He happened to play 17 games. He had 103 catches. He had over 1,000 yards. He had 4 touchdowns. He was incredibly productive. And then even this last season, he missed quite a bit of time with I think it was a hamstring injury, but he still played 10 games. I mean, he had 48 catches, 615 yards, 5 touchdowns. Amazing type of value. So these guys that love football, that win because of their ability to just be smart and be technicians and not rely so much on their athleticism, they can play in the league a little bit longer and be more productive because they're not winning strictly because they're just bigger and faster. They're winning because they do the little things right. So I think you can get 2 to 3 very solid production seasons from Cooper Kupp. I don't even think it's going to necessarily have to be for that long, but you can absolutely do that. And his contract is not going to be uh, any semblance of a problem at all. It's really not that bad. We can review this again because we went over it last time on my previous video about him. But the Broncos having rich owners, I know we talk about it a lot. It probably gets a little bit annoying for like non-Bronco fans. And we're not just like strutting it because we think that we're like cool or anything, but it's very relevant, especially to a lot of contracts like this, where you can front load them, you can give them, you can pay out, more upfront money, more cash and signing bonuses or in incentives. It just makes it easier because then you can also compete with the other players to do so while being able to lower the cap number. So when we hit the share screen again and we look at his particular current contract, we're going to start here from this bottom line from 2025. So there was an opt out. So if we traded for Cooper Kupp, okay, there's a possibility that we could, that the Rams could take on a portion of the hit, maybe the restructure proration, maybe the roster bonus. But his current cap hit for this season is 29.7 million, but 22 of that is guaranteed. You could cut him. Essentially, what they're saying is move on from him. You could save about $7.5 million this season. Now you're not going to do that if you're trading for him. But between the 2 years, if you look at it, of the you got 27 million this year, you got 29 million on the cap hit this year, and you got 27.3 million next year, right? But you're going to be looking at the base salary for this. So he's got $26 million in the next 2 years guaranteed or left on this deal. But of the $22 million, right, with the roster bonuses and some of the restructures, and when I was looking, these are a little bit subjective because there's going to be some things that it doesn't necessarily apply to a team if he gets traded. But of the let's say $56 million total that goes towards the cap here, of the 56 million, only 29 of it, roughly 30 of it is guaranteed. So you could take that 30, you can make the guaranteed portion, let's say 37 million, and spread it out over those 2 seasons and kind of just completely void out the current deals that he has. And he'd be happy to do it because even though the total number of the total contract of his will be lower, the amount of guarantees will be higher. So instead of having this, he could have a 2-year deal worth, $35 million in guaranteed money and look at it that way, if that helps. Because all these other things really don't matter all that much in terms of like the restructure and the roster and the signing bonus. It's the cap hit that's the most important. And then what is guaranteed of the cap hit, which you see here in the dead cap. So that's kind of the way that you break it down. So he can look at it and say, I don't care if I have 2 years, we'll call it $56 million left on my deal. I'd rather replace that with like a 2-year $45 million deal that has more guaranteed money and more money that he knows he's going to get into his pocket. And you can even extend it. You can add a year here in 2027 in his year 34 season. If you really want to bring the cap hit down, you have a void year and you can get out of the deal super easily. So just extending this out is not going to be difficult. The cap situation is not going to be a big deal. And the Broncos are also in a position where after this season, they're going to have 2 years minimum of extreme cap flexibility with the fact that Bo Nix is essentially going to have 3 years left on his deal after this year with the 5th-year option. Yes, you're probably going to negotiate it and do it after year 4, but you're going to have a lot of flexibility. So by that time, I don't even think Cooper Kupp's his contract's even going to be relevant at that particular time. So the Broncos are on really good standing when it comes to the cap. The cap's going to go up every single year. The Russell Wilson dead money is finished after this season. We are good to go. There's nothing for us to worry about when it comes to the cap number. It's all going to be able to make a lot of sense. And then, we're going to do something with Cortland's contract too this year. It's going to lower the cap hit quite significantly this season as well. So look out for it, guys. I'm a huge proponent. I think this is a massively good idea for this Broncos team in a lot of different ways. Now, are there other options? Sure, Chris Godwin is a great option. He's going to be a little more expensive, but he's younger. I still love that. That's still my number one choice. But when you look at just what this guy can bring to the locker room as a mentor, to just showing, teaching these young guys, and his ability to just get open at all ends of the field, create separation is huge. It's going to make the run game better. It's going to make the tight ends better. It's going to make Cortland Sutton a lot more productive. It's going to be good to go. So Broncos fans, we should get excited. Let me know what y'all think below, man. But until then, guys, be easy. Take care of yourselves. And as always, man, go Broncos. Peace out.